Hello everyone. Today we are going to build a form using server actions. We are going to use Zod for creating a form schema, and we are going to do the form validation in the server. So this is different from the client side form validation. So we can use packages like Reusable Form for doing client side validation, but here we are going to actually use Zod schema for doing our validation in the server, and we will be using two hooks from React DOM here. One is the use form state for managing the data under error returned by the server actions, and the another one is use form status, that is for managing the loading state of the form. Yeah, so this is going to be a simple project, but I'm going to create some reusable components that I can use in other projects as well. So let's get started. I'm going to create a new next project. I'm going to call this next server actions example. TypeScript, yes, ESLint, Tailwind, SRC, app router, no import alias. This is going to take a few seconds and we will jump right in. So I'm going to open my project in VS Code. Okay. So we want, let's start with our form schema. I'm going to install Zod, the application. I'm going to create forms. Oops. I'm going to create forms / login.ts. So this is going to, we're going to have the Zod schema here. Form schema login equal to z.object. Okay, I have to import c object. Here I'm going to have email c.string, and it needs to be an email. Okay, and I'm going to have password. So the only validation we're going to have is it needs to have a minimum of 6 characters. So that is the form schema. I'm going to create actions. So this is the argument, the form, the use form state is going to expect the typical form action is going to only expect the form data. This is the inbuilt type. Okay, so what the type goes into the, we can use this to get the values of the form elements. But when we are using use form state, in order to get the returned values, the data and error from the server action, we have to actually use this argument type. So I'm going to create this form state is whatever we set. This is the state that gets passed. I'm going to create a types here that's going to just have a data and the error type. Data is going to be string or null. You can have different data here. This is the data which will be returned on success. When the form submission is successful, this is the data I'm going to return. And for when the form data is failed, I'm going to return a validation error. Okay, so that is going to be in the shape of path and message. So I got this. So this may look a bit odd, but I got this structure from this type, from the Zod. So the Zod is going to give back some errors, right? So that's what we're going to return. In order to make it easy, so this is the type of error which gets returned, and basically I'm simplifying the path, taking only the path and message. Okay, I think we can do something like equal to start issue dot pick path and the message. Okay, so that will also work. Fine. So these are the types. This is the type I'm going to return. So I'm going to import that from the form, the server action, and this is going to be the return type. It's going to be an async. It's going to be a promise of form state. This is the previous state, and whatever gets returned will be the current active state. So inside it, I'm going to fetch the data. So this is the form data. I'm going to process it into an object. So this is going to be a let's console log and see. This is what we get. I'm getting the entries from it. So this will basically get the key value into an array, and then I'm getting an object, creating an object from that key value. And basically this raw form data will have a lot of unnecessary key value pairs as well. But what I'm going to do, I'm going to use a safe parse. So this is a schema which we just created. Oops, not that. Form schema login. This is a schema which we just created, and we can use the same schema to safe parse. So it's going to return only it's going to parse the data, but it's going to ignore all the unwanted ones. So we will console that, we will see some unwanted, I mean not unwanted, it will be like internally used, but we don't want that information for validating. So if the result dot success is not there, I'm going to return an error. So the return type is going to be error or data, right? I'm going to get the error directly from the Zard issues. Okay, so remember that's exactly the state we gave for the error here. Zard issue, I'm picking the path and the message. This is the actual validation happening. So we get the form data, we process that in such a way that the Zod can understand here in one line, and I'm parsing that. And if the parse is not successful, I'm just returning the error. So if it's successful, we can safely destructure the email and password. And I'm going to have a dummy function, an async function. We will create that. That's going to basically check the email and password against some static values. We'll come to that. And I'm going to manage that. So there are two things happening. One is the actual form validation, which is this. Then another one is the information gets sent to the API, which we are not building here. Sent to the API, and the return type, the return state is being sent, and I'm managing the same return type. You see, the error is always going to be an error, the message. Okay, let's create this function. I'm going to create a util library here, folder util /index.ts. So I'm going to create a check credential function. Is going to take email and password. I'm having some constant variables here, and I'm having some fake delay, and I'm just checking the email and password both have to be equal, and I'm returning this state is also important. The type is also important, or else I'm returning invalid email or password. I'm going to import that. I'm still confused. Path is missing. Wow, okay. So I'm going to make the path. Oh. What if both are partial? So actually we can do something like this. Partial. Now both gets both message and path will get optional, become optional. So in order to satisfy TypeScript, I'm going to return an empty object. Okay. Now this is a server action, and this server action is designed to be used in use form state hook. Okay. So let's create our components. I'm going to create a reusable components for form, for a submit button, and also for displaying an error. Okay. This form is going to actually use the existing vanilla form element from HTML, and we will be using the use form state. So this is the type of the component. I'm also going to create this base component in the types, which is basically just the children and class name. I keep using this for any component I create, children and class name. I'm going to import that. I'm going to import the form state. So this is exactly the type of action which the use form state hook expects. So that's why I have action as a prop and also a submit button text. Okay, so I'm using the interface here. I'm destructuring the properties, and I'm basically going to return a form. Okay, so every children goes here, so it has to be form.tsx. Okay, so we're using that. We are passing all the children inside the form, and I'm going to use the use form state from the React DOM. I'm passing the action in the first argument, and I'm passing the state. So it's going to be data null, error null. This is the state we keep using, right? So I'm passing the error. So this is going to return back a state and the form action. This form action, you see the type. It will be simple. It will simply the form data that returns nothing. But if you look at the actions, we add this form data, the previous state, right? So if you are basically using the simple vanilla form action, this is sufficient. Okay, but we cannot use it. We cannot pass this sign in action here. You cannot pass that because the use form state expects the server action to be in this format. Okay, so it needs the previous state. Okay, so we have the basic form here. That's pretty much it. Okay, let's create the submit button. So we are going to actually attach the submit button inside the form itself, and when we use this form, we will only have the input elements there. Let's create the submit form. This is the submit button. I'm using the use form status from React DOM. I'm getting the pending. There are other values here which I'm curious. I don't know what they are, but in this example, I only need the pending. So I'm using the button element. I'm making this a submit. I'm passing the class name if we have any. And if there is pending, I'm just returning the loading, or else I'm returning the children. So this is the submit button. Okay, I'm also going to let's do this. Errors state dot error. Okay. Dot. I'm a bit confused. Okay. You can actually loop that the error is going to be an array of validation error. Remember, I can use the map. I'm going to just display some divs. Later, I will be actually creating a separate component for displaying all the errors. Here, I can use the error.map message. Okay. Fine. Let's also use the path here. Fine. So this is the form element. we are almost done here. I'm going to go to the actual page here. I'm going to delete everything. Let's run the project. I do not run the project. And let's open the 3000. Wow. So actually I might have that project running. I'm sorry. So 3000. There is nothing here. Okay, let's add some main. Hello. Okay, so I'm also going to delete some stylings here. No dark mode required. Okay, this is what we have. I'm going to now add the form here. The form from the components we just created. And then I'm going to use two input elements. One is the email and one is the password. The form is expecting some attributes. So one is the action. Here I'm going to import the login action. What do we call here? Sign action. Oops. So I'm going to just pass the login action. Submit button text login. We don't want anything else. Okay. Now you're importing component that needs use form state. Okay. So we need to mark the form. So this we are using a hook here. So we need to mark this component a use client. Now functions cannot be directly passed to client unless you expose it to marking use server. Okay, so actually I have to also mark the server action as use server. Now finally NextJS is happy. I'm going to give some simple styles here. Let's give some border, rounded, px3 py1. I think it's enough. Okay, also I'm actually going to give some style in the form itself. Oh, actually I forgot to pass the action here. So this form action is how you can pass in the normal form, the vanilla form element. And also I'm going to give some class names here. Flex call gap2. Okay, oops. Let's also items start. That's our component. Let's also give some placeholder. Enter the email. Okay, looks good, decent. Now I'm going to try it. That's it. Okay, we get the error back. Also I wanted to show you this, that initially the form data is going to look like this. This is the format. Okay, name value, and I'm converting that into, I'm just making the name as the key and the value as the value. So this is the value. Let's give some styling to the error. Yeah, let's just give text red 500 with some text extra small. Okay, fine. Now this validation is happening in the server side. Now the email is okay. They're going to only get the error for the password. Oops, I need to enable the type password. Okay, now it's loading. It actually hit the API. I mean the fake API function we just had. And we got back the error, invalid email or password. So we have like two kinds of validation. One is the actual form validation, input validation. The next one is the validation by the email password validation happening in the API. We are actually good. I'm going to do something else that here when the error message displays, this is sufficient, but I'm going to do something funny that on clicking this, I want to focus the actual element. Okay. So for that, I'm going to create another component called display error. So this is the exact error message we return back from the server action, and I'm looping through that, and I'm checking if the path is there. I'm making this a button. The path will so basically we are here also I'm using the same format. Okay, in the server action I'm returning the same form state, the data and error. Even for the API error, I'm returning the same format. Okay, so it's going to be array of error. It's going to take the message and it's going to lack the path. Maybe there is a better way for managing this, but this is, if there is a form validation error, I'm going to make it a button, and I'm basically going to find that, get the document item by name. Basically get elements by name, and I'm just going to focus that. So let's create that function. So I'm getting the path name, and I'm using that to get the input element using the get elements by name. And if that is an element, I'm going to use focus on that. Okay. Now instead of looping through and creating the errors ourselves, I'm going to basically just use the component. Okay, and we have to also pass the error here. Error is equal to state.error. Okay, now on clicking the error message, it gets it's a trivial thing, you know. Yeah, and also one more thing is that let's do the let's pass the right credentials. We have one more thing to do. Okay, it loads, and I'm not actually rendering the success state. Okay, so I am not doing the success state. Okay, so I'm just having some div here. I'm just stringifying the data we get back. Maybe I don't think we need that. The data is already string. Okay. Now we get back the data. So that means the API is successful. The API call is successful. Now I'm going to actually reset the whole form when the data is successful. So inside the form, I'm going to create a ref, and I'm also using the type of the form correctly, or else TypeScript would be happy. So I'm using the type as HTML form element, and I'm passing the ref in the form, and I'm also going to use an use effect. So that use effect is going to listen the state, and if the state.data is true, I'm going to actually reset the whole form. Fine. Too hard to copy paste it. Now log in. We get the success message. So here you can do a lot of things like redirecting to a different page. So inside here, when the form submission is successful, you can do some redirect. You can do a toast message and everything. So I created these components for a bigger project. Okay, so you may think that this is a lot of code for doing a really simple form, but this can be reused in multiple ways. The concept is simple. We are creating a form schema, you're creating a form action. You have to be mindful about the arguments we pass here. You have to actually use the previous state also as the first argument when we use the use form state. I'm converting the form data into the data that we just saw, right? The key value format. And I'm using safe parse. And here we are returning back the invalid form data. Or else I'm just going forward and doing the API call and returning the same format. Even if the API fails, I'm returning the same format. And that's it. We have this form, the submit button. I'm using use form status, which is different from the use form state. I get confused about the form names. And this is a simple example which I wanted to show. So see you in the next video. Thanks for watching. Bye.